Welcome to On with Origence, the podcast where credit union leaders explore the ideas shaping the future of lending and technology. This episode is part of a special series recorded live at Lending Tech Live, Origence's annual lending and technology conference. We brought these sessions to you so the conversations that energize the room don't stay in the room. Let's get into it.
Well, now, as you might guess, we're heading back to the news desk for another On with Origence podcast, sponsored by our exclusive diamond sponsor, SavvyMoney. If you go to the gym here, make sure you put this podcast on. It makes your workout even harder. All right? Right there, we've got Jay Karstens at the news desk. JB Orecchia, CEO of SavvyMoney, also here. April Clobes, President and CEO of Michigan State University Federal Credit Union, is here. Plus, Brian Hendricks, Chief Product Officer at Origence, and Cary, Shumway, Chief Lending Officer for Community First Credit Union. What a panel. Together, they are going to explore how credit unions can drive deeper engagement through personalized experiences, financial wellness tools, and the products and services that turn members into lifetime members. So we can start the podcast with a round of applause. Everyone, a round of applause.
Thanks, Fred. I'm Jay Karstens, and this is On with Origence, turning indirect members into lifelong relationships. April, Cary, Brian, JB, we appreciate you joining this conversation. The CEOs on this stage just talked about growing their institutions. I want to talk about the growth potential that's already inside a credit union's portfolio. 89% of indirect members who have a car loan have yet to discover what else a credit union can do for them, or they haven't taken advantage of additional products and services. Today's conversation is about the opportunity to change that. April, we're going to start with you on the first question. All four of you will get a chance to provide feedback. Indirect has been one of credit unions' most successful member acquisition channels. It's one of the reasons the industry passed 100 million members. The next chapter needs to be, how can we deepen those relationships? What are credit unions getting right today, and what might we need to change or evolve?
Okay, I do think what credit unions are getting right is being in the right place at the right time for a product decision, especially if you're doing indirect lending. So for us, and then that translates to how do you onboard them appropriately afterwards. So not everyone gets the payment experience correctly, so we spent a lot of time ensuring that there's no friction in first payment due dates, and we do a lot of outbound calling and set up for those accounts to make sure that goes very smoothly.
Thank you. Cary, what are your thoughts?
All right, we're getting right today. We're meeting our members where they want to be met. Where if they want the financing at the dealership, we need to be there for them. And I think what we're not getting right, and it's not an exception for Community First, we've got some friction in our process, and we need to tear that process a little bit more apart, and we need to make sure that we have a more friction-free process to be able to get that funding and that experience to that dealership and ultimately to the member as quickly as possible.
And JB, you've spent a lot of time on this, I'm guessing. So what are your thoughts?
We take a different approach, right? We're trying to bring the consumer in first to look at their credit, to analyze their credit, right? But that's just a starting point. Why else do you manage your credit? You manage your credit in order to qualify for better rates and better loans. And so in that experience, we try and highlight all the opportunities because the credit unions generally have good rates and good products, but you're just not exposed to it. And so if you can provide personalization, so if someone gets an indirect auto loan and you send them a pre-approval for a credit card, there's no context. But if you're inside SavvyMoney and you originally came in to look at your credit score, and oh, by the way, there's a balance transfer, and I know if I consolidate these three bills, I'm going to save $3,000, now all of a sudden there's relevance to what I'm doing. Or if my score goes up and use that as an opportunity to say, hey, congratulations, you now qualify for something better, right? There's context to that. And so we really try and be an extension of the credit union, an enterprise solution that engages members in terms of their overall finances and look for opportunities to bring them back in and engage them.
Perfect. Brian?
This is a topic that's been focused on, I think, for Tony said earlier, 30 years. I think many in the room have tried a variety of strategies to convert and or expand the relationship with indirect members. When we think about what credit unions are getting right, many have adopted sophisticated marketing onboarding processes with marketing tools, both digital and traditional approaches too. And I think those have been really helpful at that initial onboarding process. I think where we have an opportunity potentially is some of what April was getting into is what is it like related to that first payment experience, but also that first 90 days, and really what does bridging the relationship look like in that first 90 days? And I think there's some data factors around that could be explored to enhance the experience.
Thank you, and we'll get more into the timing here in a little bit. We'll stick with you, Brian. You've been in the industry for a long time, working in the credit union space, I believe since 1998. There are credit unions that are improving their conversion. What do you feel like they're doing, or what have they changed to get that success? Is it technology? Is it a mindset? Is it organizational design? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a combo of all those things. I think many have as I said a moment ago, that we have all tried various things. I think what April shared a moment ago is going back to the beginning and saying, what does day one look like? I think Sunward, Steph Sherrod said similar scenario, which is they do an outbound call on day one or in between 1, 2, or 3. And if they don't reach that consumer, they focus in on making sure they make that verbal contact with the consumer. Secondary to that is really looking at how do you make that first payment experience as frictionless as possible. Many have tried various approaches to improving the payment experience, but I would say that in that area, if we move them outside of online banking, an indirect member, for example, and the only experience that they have is that payment gateway, is that payment gateway really bridging the gap to communicate what the next best product is, or how I can save additional money on a different product, a credit card, a home equity loan, or something else. So when we look at the strategies that were deployed, I think I talked with Cary about this, which is in online banking, many people have an ability to make the auto loan payment, and that's also a point to cross-sell and engage. Some credit unions have deployed a strategy to have that payment experience be outside directly on the website, primarily to reduce friction if the indirect member doesn't want to sign up for online banking. Some of that is also to reduce checks, but that experience takes them outside of the ecosystem, and if that consumer is one that's not reading emails, not reading text messages, really limits the engagement opportunities you have, right? And so I know myself, I don't really read email or text messages unless it's a receipt for something today, right? So how would we engage that consumer as part of it? And the last part there, what I'd say who's doing something really good, is when we look at an indirect member collectively, one of the data points that we've heard credit unions focus on is application abandonment, right? So if a member comes in for a product, starts a credit card application or a deposit application for a next product, in that application abandonment, the people who have focused on really honing in on indirect member, if they start an application for a second product and they abandon it, they treat that kind of as an urgent item to pick up the phone to say, is there a friction item? Are they looking for something additional from an information perspective? And part of that reason is if that first next journey to the second product is something that has friction or they don't understand it, it gets really hard to convert to another product later, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road.
Yeah, you touched a lot on timing, which is interesting. It's throughout the early cycle, and I think we heard from the panelists earlier is that they went in to purchase a car, they didn't go in to purchase a loan, right? And so if it is a first-time member for the credit union, they don't know anything about the credit union, so timing probably is very critical. Cary, what are your thoughts?
You know, I was thinking there's a dirty secret, and that is that if somebody had cracked the code on how to effectively move indirect members into full-service members, that person would be a billionaire. And the answer is it's different at every organization. You have different access to different resources, and you have different access to different technologies. And so my advice and what we're doing at Community First is we're just gonna, I don't have endless amounts of staff to be able to make outbound phone calls, but what I do have access to are technologies like VoApps that can drop a voicemail or a text message or an email to try and sprinkle those things in and try to engage those members to register for digital banking, because that's ultimately where I want our member.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add on that to two points. One, we're in 43 platforms for a reason. We did the research. 75% of consumers for a credit score product would prefer to get it through their institution, right? So that's one data point. And then to Brian's point on reducing friction, we built integration into Origence and some of the other loan origination platforms, and we saw a 65% increase in conversion. They didn't want it to be hard, right? And so why are you asking me for my name, address, social, date of birth, all that information? Streamline that process, make it easy for people to transact. So there's 2 points there. One, you have to be in digital banking so you can engage that consumer in the other products that they have. We continue to add features to bring the user back in. We just did a press release, I think it was last week, where we now have home value built into our product. Why? So someone logs in, they want to see what the value of their house is, don't send them to Zillow, someone else is going to cross-sell them there, keep them in your user experience, and then from there, hey, there's lendable equity. How do I take them down a nice path for a home equity loan? Or I want to consolidate bills, or I want to do a bathroom remodel. Make that whole process easy.
I think that's important, right? Change is hard. A lot of people are unhappy with their internet provider, but they don't want to change. They don't want to take the time, right? They want to change their cell phone provider, but they don't want to take the time. So making it easy, JB, that makes sense. April, anything to add?
For what I think about is the first onboarding is critical and digital access and payment, but then you need to be patient, and it is a long term, right? They just bought a car. Does that mean they want to change every other financial product that they have in their life? Not likely. So we have a planned rollout, and we start with unique products that maybe are not available elsewhere. We have fintech partners, so we have a roundup to pay down your loan faster. We have a retirement simplified through Silver, and those get higher engagement from our indirect members because they're not a product that's generally available where maybe they have their other banking relationships. And so we start with some unique products and Cashback Plus on your checking account, things that are not something they already have. So there's an incentive for them to look at incremental products with us.
So do you run those simultaneously, or do you run them sequentially to kind of see what the traction is?
We run them in various stages. So there's different themed emails, and some are financial wellness, and some are let us do what JB is saying, offer some contextual information about refinance and things like that. So there's a series that goes out to everyone, but it's a long-term relationship. Their car loan is likely at least 3 years, up to 7, and you're probably not going to just instantly change everything. So we have a long-term strategy for conversion.
That's great. JB, SavvyMoney sits inside online banking for 1,600 institutions. From that advantage point, what does the data say about how deepening conversations has evolved in the last 24 months?
Yeah, thank you. It's actually 1638 now, so it's outdated information. Not that I'm counting. So the data is pretty powerful, right? And so one, the consumer comes in and they're giving permissible purpose to check their credit. They're also saying, I want to be pre-qualified for offers from my institution. And we have every offer built into the platform. From a data standpoint, we do 2 things. We have an analytics platform that, one, tracks every offer that the consumer is engaged in. So you can do retargeting campaigns on that data, and it gets about a 6 to 8% conversion rate. So those consumers that are in market, that are looking at products, are highly in market, and you need to take advantage of that. If they didn't pull the trigger right then, we know if they applied, or we know if they were just kind of playing around with the calculator. We see that in the tool. Second, we actually analyze market share for every single product that the institution has. So when you go in, you can actually see, I have this much market share on auto loans by credit score band. So I know for my lending department, am I lending deep enough in the file, that I can go in and I can look at trends. And I was in looking at another financial institution last week, and their personal loan volume was dropping off a cliff. And I was like, what's happening there? So I went in, and we actually show all the lenders and where it was going. And SoFi was like picking up a lot of that business, right? And so what does that marketing team need to do? They need to look at where they're losing market share and go to the website. Is the value prop different? Is it how I'm positioning my product? Is it all rate? You don't always sell on rate, right? So how you position that, but you need to look at the data on what's happening, both from an engagement standpoint and a market share standpoint, because it tells a story. The other thing that we have is we call it a little bit like the leaky bucket. Consumers that engaged in a product and then they went someplace else. So we actually show this person was actually looking at a product and they ended up funding it elsewhere. Why did that happen? They were right there on your website, engaged in the service, and so you need to take a hard look at that and figure out where are we missing. The other piece could be, and we talked about this with Brian, it could be that your app process is clunky, right? So I started it. In fact, we even show folks that start their app and bail. And it's like, why did they bail? Where was the friction in that? Which is why we have been working on building very streamlined experiences into the LOSs, trying to shorten that app process and work in conjunction to make that like a fintech experience so it's super easy to transact.
Thank you. Data and use of that data, so important. April, how are you guys utilizing that?
Well, we use a lot of data as well, and so much like what JB talked about, we have processes for along those channel paths. So if somebody drops out of an application, goes to a queue for a lender to review and to do an outbound call. So we have a lot of data points. We have data on what the members are doing, where they're looking for products elsewhere, where they've gone. We do some remarketing. We use Experian triggers. We have a lot of, use the data to the best of your ability at all times to make the right offers. It's very contextual for consumers that you're doing an offer when it's relevant to them. So.
Is there a specific timeline that you've been able to see within your credit union of where that importance is for that new indirect loan?
So for the new indirect loan, I think as we've been all talking about, it's really making sure you have in the first 30, 60 days have established a positive relationship. And then I would say within the first 6 months is where we're targeting for someone to do something. I know we're talking a lot about loans, but for us, it's also important to capture their savings. If we don't capture any savings, it makes it hard to do more loans, right? So we have a lot of work in what we've done for savings offers and have great balances for those as well.
So let's go to our last question. One thing every credit union in this room could change starting next Monday morning. April?
I think treating the new member coming to you from indirect in the way that they are looking to interact with you. And so I think from credit unions, we want to tell everybody the credit union story and get you very excited about the credit union, which I love. But that's probably not the first message that they're looking to hear. So I think what everyone needs to do is figure out payment, friction, and then meeting them where they are for all the rest of their products in a long-term plan. Because I think we are so wired to want to convert them to a full member right away that it creates somewhat of an annoyance on, I already have a checking, stop bothering me with that. But doing what JB is talking about, getting contextual offers, having deep links to something that is unique for them that benefits them in a way that they're ready to hear.
And Cary, what are your thoughts? You're probably more in the middle of where the room is at, right? Yeah. So what are you thinking needs to change from your perspective to get indirect members to convert at a higher rate?
So if you show up on Monday morning and you want to move different, I'll tell you what's worked for us. We adopted the 1% better mentality. And so get to your leaders, encourage them to find that one thing, that 1% better for that day, for that week. Find it, celebrate it, and then tell them to do it again. They know what the quick wins are. They know where it is. We have absolutely wrapped around this. As an organization, we celebrate it on our intranet every day. And so those are the ways that I think you're going to win, because you're going to be closer to people that are closest to the process, that know exactly where those wins are.
Fantastic. Brian?
I'd start with the payment experience, right, and the onboarding experience. But specifically, if you're leveraging an outside payment gateway that's outside of your online banking or a different scenario, that's really precious real estate, but it's also the most engaging moment you have with this member who hasn't fully built out an additional relationship. And so the question becomes, what needs to change there, what needs to evolve there to make that experience one that's greater than it is today, to convert that consumer into doing more?
JB, we'll give you the last word.
Yeah, so I think my whole premise on SavvyMoney was to bring users in through things that are important to them before you try and sell them something, right? Like, I want to engage you in some value. We're not selling anything when you first enter into SavvyMoney. And whether it be your score, whether it be your home value, whether it be some other feature that we have around financial wellness, that feels like it's not trying to sell me something. And then when you get into the experience, it's a subtle way of identifying opportunities that you can bring to the surface, and it doesn't feel like a hard sell. It's really a soft sell because it's them analyzing their personal finances, and it's a way to gradually get in, and all of a sudden like, whoa, I didn't come in for this, and I just realized I can get this much value. So I think coming up with ways to bring value to members, build that relationship. It's like dating, right? You just don't go right to getting married. You want to build a relationship and court them for a little bit.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, the members are already in your portfolio. The data exists to understand them. Technology exists to reach them at the right moment with the right offer. What this conversation made clear is the gap between 11% and possibly 30% is maybe not a resource problem, but a prioritization issue. Every indirect member who walks away is a relationship your credit union already invested in. Leave today with one commitment: identify the 89% and give them a reason to stay. Thank you, April, Cary, JB, and Brian, and SavvyMoney for being our session sponsor.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of On with Origence. There are more conversations from Lending Tech Live in this series. Find them wherever you listen and subscribe so you don't miss one. Thanks for tuning in.